Today, we are going to be talking about how to plan and execute for an event. And I think, planning, funding, and executing, and also evaluating the activities and so on around events. And before I start with all the things that you need to do, I want to give you a little backdrop as to how one ought to think about planning an event. I never fell into the lap of doing that until I had to put together a farewell event for some 400 students. And I wanted it to be a meaningful event. And at the time, that was some 20 odd years ago, I had to invite a guest speaker from overseas for impact. So I'm taking you from the skeletal stages. And then I had to put together a ramshot team of students and teachers to figure out what would best impact the audience. And then we gave ourselves enough time. I think we gave ourselves maybe 6 months to put it all together. And it came off without a hitch, although you do have the little mistakes on the day, but you learn how to cover those and move on. However, if we're going to do the nuts and bolts of how to do a good plan, and a good plan is one where I'll tell you how good I got. I did a meeting that traversed from Amsterdam to France, to Switzerland, to Jamaica. And I planned it across those countries. I had to catch the plane and shepherd people across the globe from country to country, from meeting to meeting, ensure that each hotel was in place, each conference room in place, each speaker in place, all equipment and a paraphernalia needed for each meeting in place, objectives and aims for each meeting conquered. And so from those experiences, I've learned. So I'm going to bring all of that knowledge to you, the Utech students. So I hope you can take out your notebooks and make this a learning experience for yourselves, and one that you can master professionally. So let's start with the very first area, and that would be brainstorming. So the first thing is to sit casually under some tree with a couple of friends and say, we've been given a task and we have to plan an event. Where are we going to start? Those are the basic questions. That's the brainstorming thing. You can do it any which way you want to. Some people want to do it under a tree, some want to do it in someone's home, some people do it in the cafeteria, some people do it in a classroom. It's up to you. But from that initial, what are we going to do? A notebook comes out or a laptop and notes are taken. And you can initially call this first meeting, which is very important, the intro, the first solid meeting with a date and an action plan. And the thing with us Jamaicans is we're very good with talk and not good with action. So here it is, we're going to have to write down January 20th, 2022, and we have to plan an event for the accounting department. And so a proxy panel is formed of students who are interested in assisting. We're going to set up regular meetings, absolutely. And we have to say to ourselves, are we going to do one meeting per week or one meeting every 2 weeks? And we have to be very religious about it, meaning that we go to church every Sunday. Well, we go to this meeting every 2 weeks, and we have to be religious about it. And even if we can't physically be there, we somehow need to zoom in and be present that way. We also have to figure out some primary positions. We always know who the leader is. That person seems to take charge in most meetings. And we're going to need a secretary, somebody to take the notes, because we have to read what we decided on the meeting before. We're going to need an accountant, not so early, but we're going to need an accountant because there is an issue of money, and we're going to talk about that. And I think these are the three most important persons at the beginning. We're going to add a few more. I already mentioned the notepads and the diaries and so on. That's key. If you haven't learned to use a diary and you're going to be an events planner, get one. I know everybody likes to use the phone and apps and all this. The diary is what sets the tone for an event. And you're going to need two diaries actually, and I'll tell you why. You need one for 2022 and you need one for 2023. Why do I say that? Because any event you are planning, you must always give yourself minimum a year to do it. I know for most Jamaicans that sounds long-sighted because we will always be told we have to put something together in a couple of weeks. And yes, one can do that, but a real planner, the ones that come off with major success, should take a year to put together. Why? Because you have speakers to select and a theme to select. And sometimes some of you are amazed at the people you think of who you want as the speaker. And then you think they would not even look at you and want to represent your program. But if you gave them enough time and made them see how you were planning towards it and which companies were going to be in cahoots with you, then that speaker may just be interested. What am I saying? You have to whet the appetite of the speaker. You have to lay out a plan and a platform that speaker is going to want to come to your presentation. Now, someone said to me, Miss, did you see how big our reggae artists are getting? I said, yes. And the person also said to me, Miss, I really like Shensia. Do you think we could get Shensia on our program? I said, have you been reading The Star recently? And the student said, why, miss? Because she just has like a million gazillion followers. I said, there are two things you missed in the story about the rapid rise of Shensia. One is that there is a certain entertainer from a Florida radio station who travels to Jamaica regularly. What that entertainer does is buy a lot of time and followers for entertainers, but you have to somehow pay him to get you into the US market. And that is exactly who Shensia partnered with, which allowed her to gain these great alliances and these preeminent shows. And so if I wanted to get her and others on my platform, I'm not going after Shensia. I'm going after the man who opened the gate. And then the man who opened the gate would ultimately bring Shensia on board for my program. So what a lot of folks don't understand with events planning is that you don't just plan out of the blue. An events planner has to read newspapers and connect the dots of puzzles in what's going on. It's like an investor. If I'm buying a stock, I have to study the company. I have to know the president. I have to know whatever scandals are going on with that company. So that if I invited, let's say I went and I thought Alliance Mr. Chin would have been a great guy to bring on board to speak. And then I got excited because the panel said, wow, Ms. Bramwell, you got Mr. Chin to come and speak. And the next day it comes out in the paper that he has been indicted and just pled guilty to a big scandal at his company. And the reason the mud would fly in our faces with a choice like that is because the planners of the event didn't check out completely what was going on when selecting the speaker. And of course, the theme, because maybe the theme they picked was honesty in corporate ethics. And then they picked Mr. Chin of Alliance. And then the next day, Observer comes out with Mr. Chin arrested. So when we have a team and the team's going to brainstorm, we can't play willy-nilly and just pick anybody for the excitement of it. We have to be good researchers, good planners. We have to get to the depth of what we are doing in terms of speakers and themes. And let's get to the theme for a minute, because we have to pick the title about what we want to do. And I thought the image that I have there on the screen with the bulb and the students is pretty on target for how I want you to approach planning an event. But when you go for the theme, it's almost like you're going for the title of a book or the title of a research paper you're about to do. It has to be quite intelligent, and that is important. Let's move to our next slide. Selecting the speaker. I went on about Mr. Chin Shensia, and I also want you to understand how important this is, because your speaker draws the crowds. Your speaker is the person, when you plan an event, that sells the tickets. Always bear that in mind. And so the speaker has to have star appeal. The speaker has to have fun appeal. The speaker has to impart words of wisdom. The speaker has to generate at the end of his or her talk the possibility of further continuance. Continuance means connections for the department, jobs for students, doors to be open. So when a panel is thinking about who are we bringing on, it's the connection that is ultimately very important for the group that is being spoken to. The speaker shapes the event, but the speaker has to be sought very early in the game. For example, most persons of star impact and quality have timetables booked solidly. I have a good friend, Cliff Hughes, a nationwide news network. If I said to Cliff, I need you to speak at an event, he says, Sandra, I have to check my diary. And then he goes, I'm booked for the next 3 months. I could do it maybe July, June. We're now in October of 2021. And he's telling me July, June of 2022. See why I said you have to book early and you have to have your diary? Because when you're planning your event, you can't call certain folks up at the last minute. They just can't do it. They have their timetables and their agendas solidly booked for the year. It's like when I'm trying to get athletes athletic scholarships. I can't rush them to coaches the same year. I have to plan a year and a half in advance to have the coaches see them perform on the field or doing some basketball shoots or some lacrosse moves or some track and field event. I have to invite them to meets a year in advance, scouts and agents, coaches, because they pick their teams early. And that's sound advice for events planners. You have to pick your speakers early and always have a plan B, a plan B speaker. What if something happens in the course of those months to your intended person? Always have a plan B. You never know. And it's just like having a play. And I have Sandra Bramwell doing the acting. I have to have an understudy. In case an accident happens to the lead actress, the understudy has to take my part that night because I was in and broke my leg somewhere or something, and I could not make it on stage. And so the understudy steps in. So you see all this planning that has to go in, and always remembering star appeal, action, drawing the crowds, lessons learned, bada boom, bada bim. Next. Now, funding the event. Critical. Where's the money coming from? We have to pay the speaker. Not only do we have to pay the speaker, we have to prepare the hall or the conference room. And if we're selling tickets or we're having dining, we have to figure out what type of event we're having. And, things cost money. Are we going to provide refreshments or not? Are we going to transport the speaker from the airport to the hotel to there, or are they local? All questions you have to ask. And so because we're starting a year in advance, our best writer could be the secretary, could be someone else in the group, could be the president of the group, has to start securing sponsors. And you have to secure sponsors who are in tandem with what you're doing. So we have to connect with a few companies. And we have to remember that if we're inviting companies on board to support the event, we also have to showcase the companies. We have to give them due presence and credit. So our letter writing skills are of the essence, good grammar, good communication skills. And we have to send out those letters very early so we can pen a date early with them and get early commitments. So notice grammar skills, email skills, and your phone etiquette all have to be on high alert. It's very disconcerting when a company gets a letter from a student or business inviting them and there are typos in there, or the sentence structure is weak, or you didn't communicate well, or you didn't use capital letters with names or name of the company, or you put the wrong name to the company and the wrong company to the name, and there's utter confusion. There is maximum care that must be taken in sending a letter to a sponsor. And sponsors want letters in advance. And what do sponsors want in the letter? Why does this benefit our company to be there? Companies like numbers. So if I say we're going to have 1,000 students seeing your logo, or 2,500 students passing it on the rotunda at Utech, they need to know this. They also need to know that the media is going to be there, because if the media is there, so not only are you inviting sponsors, you have to invite radio, print, digital media to your event. And they need to know that that is there. You want to align their company's profile to your event. So if we're talking about investing for young adults, Victoria Mutual, Jamaica National, Barita, I can go through all the financial companies. They should all be on board to be there, because you have aligned investment, finance, and accounting. So I should see those companies and the reason they're going to need your graduates, and the reason that this topic also has a ready market. You see, it has to be a win-win for all the parties involved. The team also has to do some general fundraising for minor expenses. The sponsors bring in the big money, but the students can do some fundraising, and that should not be discounted. That still has to be on target. And I always like to kill two birds with one stone. I think if you're going to have an event and you're all in final year in accounting, I've got to loop in a career fair with this event. I have got to have planning and executing companies there, logos there, career fair for 1 or 2 hours, students passing by with their resumes, speakers, companies, students, business owners, we've all got to win. And so funding the event becomes not just a short-sighted view of let's get a little money, pay the speaker, and it's done. Make it work all around. Make it fit. Make the model fit, as I've often seen them do overseas, and I have deployed it, and it has worked very well for us. What I normally do is I will host a huge school fair, invite some 16 to 17 universities down, have students come in and meet them, but then have them go look at our schools and see how well they can partner with schools in Jamaica, and have teachers go up for training and have students from there come down. I'm always looking at the bigger picture when I plan events. And of course, I work out the funding because we're third world and they're first world. So I let them pay for their hotel. You know, I work it out. So my team works that all out. We don't get caught with the big bag of trying to pay for things. We make everybody see that they're going to benefit from the event. And that's what we call funding the event. All right. Communication. People think that event planners just have fun doing weddings and stuff. That's how I think folks see event planners. Event planners are sometimes much bigger than doing this. There's one young lady I trained, and she's now a lot bigger than I am. She works for New York Times, and they have her in the London branch. And she just staged in Switzerland a huge environmental conference for New York Times with newspapers around the world. That was a major event. It was very successful. I followed the development of it. And I know that the crux of the matter for anybody planning an event is how you communicate in whichever format. So I'm taking my time with this, the communication with the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? The companies, the students, your teachers, everyone who is going to be a part of that big performance on the day, all your stakeholders. And how do we communicate? At first I said clear and concise. Yes, I'm very short-tempered with students who show up in front of me giving me long-winded explanations about anything. If I ask you a question, I want it answered immediately. And so it is when you're writing a letter. When I'm a business person reading a letter, I want my information upfront, fast, quick, and in good grammar, syntactical sentences beautifully laid out. I want date of the event, time, title. I want to know what it is you want me to do. I want to know who is responsible, my contact person, who do I get back to, etc., all in clean, clear prose, clear and concise communicate. Selecting strategies of deployment. Am I going to use newspaper ads, radio ads, media, print media, digital. What am I going to do? What is effective? Of course, we know in this pandemic era, digital is the way to go for most things. So I have to learn how to use it. What is it called now? Meta, no more Facebook. So am I going Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat? What am I doing? I need to know how to draw folks to the site. A new area, Jamaicans are in it, but not so much on it yet. Podcasts. It's big in America. It has to start getting big here. So podcasts, another way, another strategy. And then we have some students who do something quite imaginative. I've seen it on certain campuses. They have a person who puts a costume on and walks around campus handing out stuff. That's fine too, whatever works for you. Word of mouth in the right circles. I should have put that in parentheses, in the right circles. They say, show me your company, I'll show you who you are. But the thing with this is, if I know that I want to have certain folks at my presentation, I'm going to have to figure out if there are any cocktail sessions or meetings or company meetings that they're having, and to have one of my team members visit so that they can sidle up to the powers that be and drop some hints about our event coming up and somehow try to meet with those persons before. That's what we call doing the groundwork. And I don't even know if attending cocktail events is sufficient. I sometimes send my team out to actually meet parties that I think interesting enough to spread the word. And I only know the circle from reading the papers regularly as to who is who in companies, and then I make my plunge. And things unravel like a domino effect very quickly if I did my research well and I contacted the right people. And so word of mouth in those circles spread very quickly, especially in Jamaica, because we are a very small country. When I'm dealing with the European countries, I have to start from the top. I have to go through their PR, human resource, and managers. And I have to do it the right way. We still have to do it that way in Jamaica. But then again, Jamaica is a cocktail circuit kind of a place. And so if you get your mouth in certain groups, things work. Of course, we said know your target audience. So you're going to know who you want to attract in that crowd. Business students, accounting students, sometimes English majors, but you know your target audience, so you're going to know who you want to pander to. And of course, I told you before, make it a win-win situation for the stakeholders. Who wins? How best will it benefit them? And so you plan around that, okay? The time sequence I told you, 1 to 2 years, always. If I'm planning an event, I need exactly 1 year, because my diary, bookstores in America know me because I buy diaries 2 years in advance, and because I have to plan out events. I know at this time of the year, farewell ceremony, speaking at Utech in January, I have high schools in February and March, I have graduation ceremonies in June, I have preparation for classes July. My year is planned. I have schools and universities visiting from September to December. From January to February, I have the European circuit. I have to be in England, Amsterdam. Even with this pandemic, I have to be at fairs to meet and greet schools. So everybody's agenda is planned. When can we put in other very fast well, I call it uniquely created events that swing in on our time. We've got to find time to do that. So 1 to 2 years is very good for any event, for a spectacular event where you want to showcase the best of the best and, and earn enough from what you're putting out and get the best speakers and have companies there who are looking forward to the event as you are. Have all your stakeholders at play, your media, your guests, your audience, your faculty, if you're still within the university setting, all the stakeholders. If I'm planning an event for a church, all the pastors are on board, the choir, the congregation, everybody who is supposed to be there, I have them there. And my singers brought down from the US. If I'm putting on a religious showcase, everything is planned. All I have to do on the day of the event is sit down and check off my to-do list. And that comes with the planning 2 years in advance. Okay, so execution. We talked about strategy. We now have to execute. And then we're hoping, fingers crossed, for success. But we also have to be aware that with execution, Murphy's Law always steps in. And Murphy's Law is you plan the event so well that you didn't factor in that on the way to the event, there would have been a 3-way car accident on Mandela Highway, and your speaker is held up for 2 to 3 hours on the highway, Murphy's Law. Or the caterer just discovered that when they prepared the food, 2 of the chefs came down with COVID, major disaster. Or you discovered that the mics aren't working, another major disaster. Or you told the company bringing the chairs in that they should have been there for 6 o'clock, event is starting at 7, and it's now 7, and the chairs aren't there, another disaster. So what do? You maintain your cool. And here's what you do. You solve whatever problem there is with it with timely measure. I don't say put clowns on the stage to occupy the time of the people who are there. It just means I may have to reverse the agenda until the speaker gets there. I may have to put things in a different order. As for the chairs, I would probably apologize about the chairs. I would have my audience, I would find some solution for my audience, but always remember this, the show must go on. The food, well, if COVID came down, I can't serve the food because that's a major disaster there. We're gonna have to take that loss. So the food area would absolutely get shut down. And with a clear, concise explanation to my audience, I think we would have cleared that hurdle. So the main thing for the team to understand is that for event planners, you have to maintain your cool. You have to solve quickly. You do not panic. You solve problems. We have been to many events where we've had to iron over. One of my favorite ones was everything was planned to the hilt. And we stood there waiting for the audience to come, and a major rainstorm started. And in that rain, at least if it were me, I was already at the location. I said to myself, if I had to go to an event, I wouldn't go anywhere. With that kind of rain setting up, I would just stay home. Fortunately, whatever I had to say to the audience that night, they drove through the rains. I had people coming from Montego Bay in that rainstorm, and they drove through the rains and they came to UWI's campus. We had it in the Gold Room, and I had an audience of 400 people that night through the rains. Why was that? They wanted to hear what I had to say, and they drove through the rains and came to the event. everybody, by the time the event was over, the rains had subsided, all was well. But seeing that kind of setup of the rain and driving on the highway with that rain, I don't know, I would have turned back, but they came. And that's what we call Murphy's Law for any event. You have to remember, it will happen. Just remember to have your wits about you and to problem solve quickly. A coordinated team, a coordinated team. You saw the group I had in the beginning, that image I had with everybody holding each other's back. If we have one link who does not do the work, the team will suffer. And I have a very sharp mouth. So if at the beginning of the meetings, I notice one team member not pulling his or her weight, I'm going to ask you to step out. Because by the time we get to the end product, if I call Mary, Jane, John, or Joe, everybody knows what has to be done. Each person knows his or her responsibility. Everybody carries out his or her task to the max. That's a coordinated team. If the team is not coordinated, it will not come off. Now, I will give you the story of one young man who was on my team. And he was Mr. Doubting Thomas. He came along with everything we were doing, but he doubted that we could pull it off. See, now, he had not been with our team for very long. He had just come on the last 6 months. So he had no idea just how things would unravel. And so on the day of the event, he sat back with a very smug attitude, like, this is going to fail catastrophically. And he sat back while the rest of us ran around, and we simply smiled. It was the night of the rainstorm. And he thought nobody was going to come out. And then in his mind, he thought, how are we going to pay for the room and the speaker, and how are we going to do all of this? We just sat back and prepared everything as beautifully as if no rainstorm was taking place and the show would go on. And he sat back and he watched us, smirking. And when the room started filling up with the guests and the show went on, he didn't know what to do with himself, because you see, the rest of the team knew their jobs and his job, and they simply took over and ran the show and left him out of it. He didn't know what to do with himself. At the end, he said, I want to help. They said, but we needed your help earlier, but you didn't see it fit then. And then he knew that the axe was going to come, because the team then had to go to Europe and he was not going to be invited, because we already saw what he was made of. A coordinated team works from the beginning to the end. They're interlocked, and their main goal and objective is to serve up a successful event. As you notice there, it said each team member, equal responsibility, equal accountability. Very important. So we knew right away. We didn't even have to tell him that he was going to be fired, because he literally fired himself. He fired himself because he was inactive. He fired himself because he did nothing. And we just smiled to ourselves, because we knew the game. We've done it all the time. We knew how to organize, how to set up the room, how to have everything in working order, how to greet the guests, how to have security out front. We had it all done. We had our checklist. But he thought, oh, we don't know what we're doing. Oh, I don't know if this is going to happen. Don't they hear the thunder and the lightning? Okay, yeah, sure. Murphy's Law. But always be prepared. All right. So, aftermath. The team, event's over, and you must always, as a team, clap yourselves and say, how did we do? How must we improve for the next one? Was it flawless? What should we look out for the next time? Was it a job well done? And treat yourselves. Go out for dinner. Go for drinks. Do something together. You deserve it. And never ever think that you cannot improve on the last event you just did. Always go bigger and better, always. But ask yourselves, how did we do? And on that note, I have 15 minutes left for questions. I don't know how we're going to do it. I think we can go to the chat room and ask questions, or I guess you can speak, and my technician is coming in, I guess, to put me back on talking to you face-to-face, and then maybe we could have you each ask your questions. I'll go to the chat room. I see, okay. So I don't know if you have any questions, you can put it there, or you can ask from here. Yes, anyone.